Round number 5 of the Wessex League, and we are underway, and your man is a whole shot hero again. I got an absolute flyer of a start again, and I've come round this corner and I thought, actually, I don't really want to be in first place. There was a headwind and look at my heart rate going ting, ting, ting. I was thinking, wow, this is hard leading this out. But thankfully, I think it's just here, Pedro comes round me and I'm like, absolutely lovely. I'll just jump on his wheel, get a bit of a draft, because my heart rate went from 0 to 174 we're at now in 30 seconds. It was full gas off the line. But honestly, my starts this year, if the race was 100 metres, I'd be a champion. Unfortunately, we've got another hour to do after that. But the pace was hot straight out of the gun, as usual with Cross. The course was dry, fast, and there was a couple of tricky little bits, off-cambers, etc. And I made some fundamental mistakes that I'm going to show you in this race. Look, well, looking back, I think they're mistakes, but in the moment, I probably couldn't have done anything about them unless I was a little bit fitter. So, here we go. We're coming down this gravel stretch. There's a little corner, and then we go into the first off-camber. Now, mistake number 1, I do not like following some. I got that bit horribly wrong there. My wheel slipped on the gravel, but you can see my cornering. I make up a lot of time on Pedro, and you'll see that throughout the race when I am on his wheel. But what I did find is it is horrible following someone on an off-camber because you can't see the line, you're so close, so if they make a mistake, it slows it all down. But it was just, I didn't quite have the power to get to the front on the off-camber, before the off-camber, but you'll see here, yet again, I'm taking a different line up this bank because I know if he gets it wrong, but I almost T-bone him and have to hit the brakes. If he gets it wrong, puts his foot down, I won't be getting up the bank and it'll be signed, sealed, delivered. But I'm going to speed this little bit up in a section in a minute. Basically, 3 of us got a really good start. It was me, Pedro and Oscar. They are the 2 young bucks that absolutely ripped my legs off last week. So I know where they're stronger than me. It's in a straight line. It's on the flats. Look, Pedro's really putting out the power out of these corners. But what you will notice is I make up a lot of time on the corners. But there's only so much you can do that. I'm like having to slow down. But when he kicks out of the corners, it's so tough. And that is just a... Look at that. You saw how much space I made up then. Look, he's really absolutely hammering it. And at this point, I'm not going to lie, I was 3 minutes in. I was like, Jesus, if they don't ease off the gas, this is going to be absolute hell. And it was the same up this little kicker. He really went for it again. And these are the points in a race where you've just got to dig in. And my dad says it all the time. You've got to suffer and just cling on for dear life and try and recover best you can. But it was really tough because he was piling on the pressure, and some of the drags, grassy drags, I wasn't very good at. But you can see here I get a little bit lazy, let the wheel go, because I know I'm going to close the gap on this next few corners. Look how important cornering is in Cross. Look how much I've closed the gap on him. I could have almost overtaken him there, but I didn't really want to because I was struggling. So I was thinking, in a minute there's going to be another drag where I'm going to be able to sit on his wheel, stuff like that. I got these corners a little bit wrong because I was absolutely all over the shop. I was absolutely clinging on for dear life. But basically, the 3 of us got away on lap 1. We do get joined by a 4th rider in a second, and the group becomes 4, and the boys just stick the hurt on me. There's no 2 ways about it. This bit was a wicked little chicane here before we go into the next little section. So Pedro's still pushing the pace on the front, which I was surprised about. At Fox Hill, couldn't get the man to take a turn. Now he's leading us out. But up this little bank, another little tricky section here. You've got to commit to it. But you see here, Pedro looks over his shoulder there. And I think he realises he hasn't done as much damage as he thought he was going to do. But he's still pressing on, so fair play. But I am now thinking, after that first lap and not getting into the off-camber first, I'm thinking to myself, I need to get into that off-camber before him, because I felt like they're the areas I'm stronger. So if I can pull a bit of a gap on that next stretch where they really put the power down, I can try and recover a little bit. So in this next little section, I make a move to the front, but Also, I know there's a couple of corners coming up, so I can give myself a little bit of breathing room by really pushing the pace on these next few corners. So just here, I move up and take the front, because I know we've got a couple of minutes now to get to that off camber, and I can put the pressure on through these few corners here, make them have to work, and then hopefully get into the off camber first, and then I won't struggle as much on the other side and I'll be able to take my line. So coming up here, Pedro thinks the same thing. He wants to get into the off camber first. He tries to come round. I get the sharp elbows out and I put him in the tape. I stamp my authority. Respect your elders, Pedro. Bloody 18 and 17-year-olds ripping my legs off. I'm not going to lie. We made contact. Love it or hate it, cyclocross is a contact sport and you got to get those elbows sharp. And it was because I wanted to get into this off camber first, and I'm not going to lie, where they were putting pressure on me, I had an absolute stinker across it. But you can see how much faster we're actually moving into this section now. I hit my handlebars on that bit of tape there where I was trying to cut it too close. But when you haven't got someone to follow, it's so much easier to put the power down. But obviously, my power up this section, this is where I struggled the most in the race. Just wasn't good enough for young Pedro, so he came back round and put the hurt on again, and up this bank again. It was really, look at my heart rate starting to tick up to 180. Your boy's not got much more in the tank when it gets that high. And yet again, he kept pressing on, and same again here. He looks over his shoulder, sees that he hasn't done any damage, and finally he eases off the gas a little bit. Long behold, Oscar comes round. These bloody nippers, mate. They are ripping my legs off. And honestly, I was thinking right now, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. Because I knew I wanted to get into that off camber first again, but I just didn't have the speed. And you can see, look, Pedro's moving up here because he also wants to get in that off camber. And these little surges were just really hurting me. In hindsight, look, round here, I'm not going to point the finger, but Oscar, you really messed this up for me, mate. You took this corner like a granddad. Come on, boy. And then he makes a mistake here. I go round him. He shoves me into the tape. You chopper, Oscar. But it put me on a terrible line for this off camber, and I had an absolute stinker, which you saw that. I tried to close down the gap on the off camber, but where I was on a different line, I then had to hit the brakes because Pedro was there, and he then gapped me. And as he gets up the top of this bank, I think he realised he had put a bit of a gap into us, and he put down the power. And there was nothing I could do about it. Oscar knew that. He come round to try and shut the gap down. And right now, I was on my limit. I was just like, you've just got to hold the wheel, hold the wheel. And we came out of this next corner and he kicked really hard. Strong, strong boy to shut the gap down. Oscar Hutchins, who was now bridged over to us, knew that, saw the danger, went. And it was absolutely signed, sealed, delivered for me. I was dispatched. But if you learn anything from this video, kids, ladies, gentlemen, it's to never give up. I kept just digging away, setting my own pace, and you'll see here Oscar made a little mistake up that bank, so I almost got back on. And then they pulled away again, and I was like, just one little surge and I can get back on. Look, I'm just dangling off the back now, but that's the thing. If you give up and let your head drop, those boys will just pull away. But you can see I managed to close the gap down. But yet again, coming into this off camber, I just got back onto it. But Oscar just let the wheel go a tiny bit, I think, coming out the other side. I just hate, look, you can see that gap that opened up there. And then he started to close it down. But where I'd only just got back onto the group, I was really struggling to close it down. And literally the same thing happens again here. He makes a mistake there. I come up the inside. There's another gap to close. Oscar, you're killing me here, mate. But I do close it down. And I'm just thinking now, right, ease off, boys. Let me have a break. And strong, strong boy. I take my hat off to him. But Oscar comes to the front again and starts putting the hurt on. Not only as he keeps shafting me by making mistakes and putting me in awkward positions, I'm blaming this race on him. I'd have won if it weren't for you, Oscar. No, I'm joking. They destroyed me. Yet again, the pace got lifted. And honestly, We're what, 23 minutes in now. I see a mistake there from Pedro. That's the ripple effect you get. These boys see that mistake, they jump on it and punish you. And then I see myself trying to close the gap down, and I just didn't have the power. You'll watch Pedro come past me here and he comfortably shuts the gap down. My problem is lack of power, so I got dispatched again. And I'm better in the corners, so I need to try and work on getting into the corners first, getting into the off-cambers first. But yet again, you can see them down the bottom here. They've dispatched me, but do not give up is what I said to myself. Keep fighting. And I came past the pits here and Del Boy shouted at me like 17-second gap, and in my head I was thinking, no, that is too big to shut down. But they eased off the gas just here and I was like, right, yet again, Georgie boy, bury yourself, get back in the lead group. And I just about managed to bridge back over to them down on this downhill section here on the other side. I took some rapid corners here. I was absolutely flying down. I felt like I was flying down this section. Quick corner through the chicane. And I did manage to shut the gap down to them through them 3 or 4 corners. The problem was I just couldn't deal with the power they had on these flats. Look, they're just really ramping it up. You can see Oscar at the front looking over his shoulder thinking, this chopper's back again. So every time I got on, they just really started to apply the pressure again. And I couldn't deal with it. I didn't have the strength, didn't have the power. And all of these mistakes, like I was saying, being fourth, every time I had to shut down a gap, it was a match burnt. And you've really got, look, there's gaps open up so easily on the off-camber. Look, Pedro had to put a foot down there. So yet again, we were then closing the gap down to Oscar and he noticed that, hits on, and I'm like, please boys, give me a break. And I just couldn't shut these gaps down. So as you'll see here, we're about 38 minutes in. I'm clinging on for dear life again. They're starting to dispatch me. And what happens yet again? Your boy gets dispatched. Yet again, I didn't have the power up this drag. Those boys did, so I know what I need to work on. My cornering's there. I'm hoping when there's a bit of mud, it will slow everyone down. But what did I say? Do not give up, because I do not know how, but somehow I've bridged back onto them through the twisty section where I was obviously had a little bit more speed. But as soon as I got back on, it was as if they wanted to punish me again. I'm not going to lie, we're 42 minutes in. Look, you can just see I just didn't quite have that snap that they had when we were going up these little banks and little rises. So coming into this section here, I was thinking, you're in the same position again. Watching this back, it's in hindsight, you can always say, you've made a mistake. You're going into the off-camber again in last place. So if there is a gap that opens up, you're going to have to shut it down. But I just didn't have, at the time, I didn't have the speed or power to get in front of them because they kept the pace so high. But I think this is I think we had 3 laps to go at this point. Look, Pedro puts a foot down again. That opens up a little gap. What's got to happen? You've got to shut it down. That ripple effect is absolutely killer because all of these surges are just matches that I do not have after bridging back on. You can see that gap that's opened up. You've got to shut that down, and even just holding the wheel to shut that down is hard. So you can see Pedro accelerates out of this corner. I didn't have it. Yet again, signed, sealed, delivered, dispatched out the back. And that was the last one. I thought I might be able to close it down again, but honestly, my matches were burnt. I had nothing left to give. So it was just a case of absolutely giving it everything to the finish. And I was pressing on still. I was trying to hold off the people chasing me down, and I wanted to keep 4th place. And when you're tired, this is when mistakes happen. I'm gonna leave this bit of footage in because the rocket already caught me, but I decked it. How to ride off cambers like a pro. You can't park there, Georgie boy. But after that, it was race over for me. I reined it in a little bit to make sure I got to the finish line in one piece, held on to 4th place. But honestly, I know where my strengths are this year. They seem to be in the corners, the technical sections. Maybe that's from riding mountain biking for the full year. It's helped me massively. Hopefully, if I can just get that little bit of snap, little bit of power, we can come away with a better result, but I ended up crossing the line in 4th place.